welcome to the LD UK group, Sonia. So we're live in the group now. Thank you so much for joining us today and spending time with us.
That's okay, no problem.
So just to introduce Sonia, Sonia is the founder of NTA Clinics and she has been working in naturopathic medicine for 16 years. She's a qualified homeopath and bioresonance practitioner and trained at the College of Practical Homeopathy. She has experience in treating Lyme disease patients, autistic patients, chronic fatigue patients, as well as people with other chronic and complex health problems. Sonia combines bioresonance with homeopathy and herbs as part of her work at NTA, and she's trained many other homeopaths as well as lectured at homeopathy colleges and conferences. She focuses on integrating different modalities of treatment and managing clients with chronic illness. Welcome.
Thank you. That all sounds about right. It went quick, that 16 years.
It does have a tendency to, doesn't it?
It does.
So I guess for those that maybe don't know you, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your treatment philosophy and how you came to treat chronic Lyme patients?
Yeah, of course. First of all, naturopathic treatment is really different from conventional treatment. So that's one thing in itself. So like all naturopaths, our approach is to assess what went wrong so that chronic infection with Lyme and co-infections could even happen in the first place, because for a naturopath it's not just about the bugs. So most people could be bitten by a tick carrying Borrelia or something else, and either their immune system would prevent it before it gets to the stage of causing acute Lyme disease, or it would deal with it at that acute level, and not allow it to develop into chronic disease. But once the bugs have got past those defences, we're in trouble, because stealth infections like Borrelia are incredible, and Lyme is the most complex illness that I've ever treated, considering I used to specialise in autism. That's quite something. So we look for underlying causes of weakness and we deal with those. So they are usually toxins of some kind. We're living in an increasingly toxic world. Things like pesticides like glyphosates and heavy metals like aluminium, mercury, and toxins from mould, that kind of thing. We also look for structural problems like jaw or spine misalignments and other stressors like EMF sensitivities or emotional issues. They're all possible underlying areas of weakness, but everyone's different and our treatments have to be tailored person to person. So our approach is to assess everything, support everything where the function is weak, and then slowly work through the layers of things that are underlying causes for that person. And we eventually will get to a level of function that's good enough to start using treatments to actually kill the bugs. And as we do that, symptoms really start to improve a lot more quickly. So because we work in this kind of gentle way where we're doing a lot of preparation work, our patients are far less likely to hurts, and if they do, we can quickly adjust their program of treatments so their symptoms settle quickly, and then we can move things on again. But our approach is even different to most other naturopathic practitioners, because we think that chronic illness is such a mixture of causes, and so it needs a mixture of supports. So lots of naturopathic practitioners would be quite attached to one method of treatment and believe that they can do everything that they need with that one method in terms of chronic illness. And there are amazing herbalists and homeopaths and nutritionists who really understand about Lyme, but the way we work, we think that that's missing something, and it's as if you're not working with a full set of tools. So I used to believe that homeopathy could be the answer to everything my first few years in practice, and then I discovered our Nature's Wisdom range of nutrients and herbs, and everything kicked up a gear. It made all the difference in the world. And from then forwards, integrated healthcare was my passion, really, and the way that I felt we all needed to move so that we could help people with chronic illness. So we use herbs and homeopathy and frequency treatments with our bioresonance. And we're really aware as well of people needing psychological clearing support and structural correcting techniques. And we offer both of those, lots of support with both of those things. We have lots of amazing practitioners that we're connected with that we can recommend when we need support outside of what we do ourselves. And very recently we trained with Dr. Klinghardt, learning his ART diagnostic method, and sort of realised that his integrated approach is quite similar to ours. So if you don't like what Clean Heart says, you probably aren't going to like our approach either. But we're very, very individualised. Each client is treated differently. We're very aware of how vulnerable clients with Lyme are, and we don't take on a lot of patients for that reason, because we know that new clients especially are going to need lots and lots of support from us. I think the last part of your question was to do with how did we get involved in treating Lyme, and I think, like a lot of other practitioners probably, we just had a few cases start to come along and really wanted to help those people. It's about 7 or 8 years ago now. Started doing lots and lots of research and learning how to get better at it, and I think we're finally getting there.
Oh, that's great, thank you. And I guess one thing it might be worth explaining is what actually is, well, let's start with homeopathy. What actually is homeopathy, and how would you explain that to somebody who either had no knowledge or perhaps was sceptical about it?
Yeah, so homeopathy and bioresonance and biofeedback treatment, they're all coming from the same place, really. And first thing to say probably is that you don't have to believe in homeopathy for it to work. It works on babies and animals. They don't know what they're getting. There's an article that we've written that's on our blog at the moment that goes into like detail about positive research studies that have been published on PubMed and all of the countries around the world where homeopathy is a mainstream medicine. So I won't sort of go too much into that. But basically, homeopathy and bioresonance therapy are frequency treatments. They are not chemical treatments. So you have to look at them completely differently. If you believe that EMF sensitivity is real, so that is being negatively affected by things like living near a mobile phone mast, and there's loads of evidence to show that that's real, then you should be able to understand that frequency treatments can also help us. If electromagnetic fields can harm us, then they should be able to help us. They're having an effect on us. So it's actually the frequency of our homeopathic remedy or a bioresonance treatment that's interacting with our body. It's interacting with our body's own electromagnetic field. They're not interacting with our biochemistry. It's not a chemical process. It's completely different to conventional medicine. So I often say to people to think of it like it's a software download. So we're taking on new frequencies, and that's giving our body's electromagnetic field information that starts a process. So it works with your body's innate healing mechanisms, which are incredible. We are built to heal. We are designed to get over everything and repair from everything if we possibly can, if we've got the raw materials. So those healing mechanisms are really powerful, and things like homeopathy and bioresonance treatments just harness them. So, you know how much it hurts if you slam your finger in a window. Believe it or not, if you were brave enough, if you did it a second time straight after, your body actually then sends twice as many healing resources to that area of your body. So it will feel better quicker. And a good homeopathic remedy or bioresonance treatment does the same thing. It's just like amplifying the body's healing response. So one of the things that gets talked about with homeopathy is how dilute they are. So they can't sort of do anything. There's nothing chemical left in a homeopathic medicine. But somehow the dilution process that does make it weaker chemically makes it stronger on this frequency level, makes us stronger on an electromagnetic level. So that's why we have to be really careful with homeopathy, because our higher potencies have a very strong effect, even though there's basically nothing in them. It's really interesting with frequencies because science is kind of catching up and starting to explain how maybe homeopathy works. So science recently discovered that some insects are attracted to flowering plants by the vibration that they give off. It's nothing to do with smell or colour. When they're ready to have their pollen collected, they give off a particular vibration, and that is attractive to the insects. So the whole universe really works on a vibrational level more than a chemical level. It's really interesting. I just wanted to talk about one example though of a research study, because I think it's kind of relevant to Lyme and it's important, is to do with leptospirosis, which is a serious bacterial infection. It affects, I think it's about 10 million people a year, but mainly in tropical countries. The death rate from it is about 10%, and usually they treat it with doxycycline by coincidence. In 2007, the Cuban government gave 2.3 million people living in high-risk areas of Cuba a homeopathic nosode against leptospirosis. So that means a tiny homeopathic dose of that bacteria that's designed to wake the body's immune system up to the frequency of that bacteria. So out of those 2.3 million people that had the homeopathic dose, there was an 84% decrease in cases that year. And kind of as a control, the 11 million people that didn't have the nosode had an increase in 22% in cases. So, you know, there is lots of really positive research out there into the effectiveness of homeopathy, and it's astounding to me that because conventional researchers can't understand how homeopathy works, they deny that it could be useful, especially for things where we haven't got a good pharmaceutical treatment, like the situation with Lyme.
I guess there's been other things in the past that we haven't understood until science proven them, and then are now very mainstream thinking. So
definitely, of course, that's true. I've had 20 years of seeing miracles from homeopathy, and it just makes me really sad to think of all the people that could be helped if they just gave it a try. Because if you give it a try, you're soon going to know.
Well, yeah, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? And how? I think it's probably worth just asking this. How does it compare or is different to LDI?
It isn't really different to at all. Low dose immunotherapy is homeopathic doses of things being used to stimulate the body's immune system. It's the same. They're the same principles.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it was worth clearing that up. One question that came in, which I think might relate back a little bit as well to when you were saying about how some people are able to fight off infections and others become very sick.
Yeah.
How often, or do you believe it's possible to have chronic Lyme disease without having co-infections?
It's not something I've seen in my experience because chronic Lyme depletes the immune system so much that the bacteria we were already carrying that weren't causing any problems get an opportunity to have a party. So they're just allowed to explode within our systems and cause their own chaos alongside what the Lyme is doing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And perhaps if somebody does only end up infected with Borrelia and their immune system's strong enough, there's less of an impact than perhaps if they pick up, Babesia or something at the same time.
Yes, there definitely would be less of an impact. But because we all carry in bugs all of the time, we're all carrying viruses and bacteria and fungal things, and everything is part of the normal biome. So anything that is reducing the effectiveness of our immune system to keep that all in balance means that things will overgrow and start to cause problems. And it tends to be the weaknesses in areas that we've had in the past, which is why as naturopaths we want to know so much detail about your health in your childhood and your health in your family and all of those sorts of things, because those weaknesses dictate where the bacteria can get into and cause trouble. So, if you've had sore throats and ear infections as a child, that's likely to be an area of weakness that the Lyme can get into and affect, and that maybe if you've had some residual strep left over from childhood, that's going to really flare up as well. It's all about individual susceptibility, really. We're all so different.
Yeah, and do you believe that Lyme and the various co-infections can be cured or put into remission, or do you think that they're just kind of managed and kept at bay?
That is a really big question.
Sorry, we didn't say it would be easy.
I've asked so many Lyme doctors and practitioners that question. I'm still not sure I'm 100% happy with my sort of model around that, but I think how to put it. Um, So, like I was saying a minute ago, we've got pathogens that live within our body all the time in harmony. We need them. We're full of streptococcus and E. coli and all sorts of things. No problem at all when they're healthy. But they overgrow and become a problem if we are burdened enough by the toxins that we hold that our immune system can't keep us healthy. Stealth infections are different, like Borrelia. They, especially the strains of Borrelia that we're seeing in recent years, they sneak past our immune system. They alter their own DNA so that they can sneak past our immune system and get into us. And the process of them infecting us actually changes us at a really sort of deep level. It alters us completely. But overall, I believe that good naturopathic treatment can get everyone back to a level of health they probably haven't experienced since they were a child. And so if you go through a really good process of recovering from chronic illness and then you maintain the things that you need to so that you stay well, my belief is that any bugs remaining will never be able to cause you chronic illness again. So my definition of cure is a permanent healthy state, and I think it is entirely possible to achieve that post-Lyme.
Well, that's very reassuring, I'm sure, to lots of people listening, and probably a good time to ask, do you think that people, once they're in some form of recovery, do they need to keep up? You mentioned around keeping a healthy state. Do you think that means that they need to keep taking herbals or homeopathy in like a maintenance program, or is that more about just lifestyle and so on?
It is mostly about lifestyle. It's mostly getting an understanding of what were the things that were your weaknesses and what are the things that you need to look out for again so that you keep really well. We encourage people to come to see us for a maintenance review once or twice a year, depending on the person and how sick they were before. So it's really just like booking yourself in for an MOT. You come once a year, we run our checks, we see whether anything's developing a weakness again, and we give you a bit of boost with treatments. And then people go off again and they're quite happy again. I think prevention is always a million times better than cure. So you have to be really focused about looking after yourself after you've had a chronic illness. You can't say most people are focused about it. Most people never want to risk going down that rabbit hole again. They will always eat well and look after their stress levels and do the things that they know that they need to stay well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's far easier to take your health for granted until you've had a period where you've lost it.
Definitely. And I think also that happens if you've been close to somebody with a chronic illness. People do tend to really start looking after themselves as well, and sort of learn through the person that they're helping what would be good for them too.
Yeah, exactly, and end up copying diet and lifestyle habits as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right.
And in terms of you talking about seeing people getting well and ending up in a permanent state of good health. When we look at your clients, we've had questions around what sort of percentage make recovery, and also perhaps are there any patients who treatment doesn't work for or don't end up getting back to that full health? Maybe there's some permanent damage or...
I'd certainly say that nothing we do is capable of causing any damage, definitely. We audit our cases quite regularly, and I recently looked at all of my Lyme clients that are currently in treatment. So everybody that I looked at has been on my programme for between 6 and 18 months. And I found that the average rate of improvement in symptoms so far that they were reporting to me was 65%. So that ranged between some people only at 30% improvement so far, but some of these people have only been with me for 6 months, and going right up to 90% improvement. We used to say that we thought 70% of our cases got some improvement and over 50% get completely well. I think those are pretty good statistics, but actually I'm quite confident that we're doing quite a bit better than that now. But of course, we're not getting everybody completely well. Some people find our process too slow or too hard and make the choice that they need to go for more aggressive methods of treatment, and quite often that will be in the US. That's completely understandable. It can take us over a year to get people even to the stage of treatment where we feel they're strong enough to cope with the killing herbs, the antimicrobial herbs. So it can be really slow, and we are cautious. We don't want to make anything worse. Even Horowitz, who is probably the leading world expert on Lyme, I would say, he says that he feels 70% of chronic Lyme cases can get better just with naturopathic treatment. And I think at least that is true. We don't know what 70% they are. We don't know what makes a difference. We tell all of our new Lyme clients coming that they need to mentally commit to at least 12 months of treatment with us, and that it will be hard and there'll be lots of ups and downs, but we will constantly be there supporting, reassessing, changing their treatments, working through everything together. And I'd say at the worst, if people aren't feeling they're having enough improvements, or they're not having enough improvements quickly enough, or they hit some new symptoms, or something is stuck, and they decide to go off and have different treatment or something more aggressive, we really feel like they will be in a better place to cope with that treatment, meaning that it's got a better chance of success. I was thinking about this, and I used to, a few years ago, I used to work as part of an integrated naturopathic team, and we specialised in treating couples who needed help with fertility. It was really great, actually. So we attracted couples that had tried every type of treatment without success. We were their last hope for a child. And about 50% of those couples had a child with our help alone. They didn't need any further treatment. But about another 25% went back and had fertility treatment like IVF or some other assisted fertility, and then got a baby. So we helped 3/4 of those people one way or another. And I don't know yet, maybe Lyme is similar to that. Maybe there are some people we can only take part of the way. But overall, I'm really happy with sort of our outcomes and our level of success. And I personally don't believe that antibiotic therapy without huge amounts of supportive treatment can actually restore health. I think that you might reach a point of being Lyme-free and much more functional, but my belief as a naturopath is that your body will have been weakened by it unless you've done a lot of supportive work. And then if that is the case, in the future, you'll come into contact with another pathogen that could easily put you back into chronic illness. And I believe that what we do actually restores a better state of health in the end, including dealing with the Lyme.
I think that leads us on to various questions quite nicely, but I think one question from off the back of that I've been asked a couple of times before this interview is somebody has already been down the route of aggressive antibiotic treatment under one of the LLMDs in America, would your program work in reverse, if you like, so that if they haven't prepared their body first, could they come to you to help once they're in that state of remission?
Things afterwards. I know what you're saying. Yeah, definitely. We prefer not to treat people whilst they're taking long-term antibiotics. It's much harder for us, but we do look at every case individually, and we'll always, offer to do as much as we can. But if somebody's had that kind of antibiotic therapy and they're, concerned about their level of health, that's definitely something that we can help with.
Great, thank you. And you talked about people needing to commit to a thorough process, minimum 12 months. I mean, I've not seen many people get better and faster than that anyway. But, a minimum of 12 months and commit to it. How many, I know it's very different, everybody's different, very difficult because everybody's different rather. How many treatments do you normally, people need before they start to see an improvement? Do people start to get some improvement before that 12-month period?
Yeah. We usually find by the 3-month period, there are definite things that are improving. So we're definitely able to see that there's a positive effect from the treatment. And then usually our clients are at a stage where they're building their level of trust with us, understanding that what the treatments that we're giving them are for and feeling the difference within their body. So it's very early stages, and there'll be lots of ups and downs past that point, but yeah, in general, by the 3-month point, there are specific things that we can know are definitely improving.
Great. We also had a couple of questions about whether you find some clients just can't tolerate your treatment at all. We've got some clients in the group that are very sensitive.
Yes, we do have some clients who feel that they can't tolerate our treatments, especially the herbs and sometimes the homeopathy. People can have really strong reactions to those things, but in the majority of cases, we can make up very individualised prescriptions that cater to most things. And we can be very creative with the homeopathy as well. So we'll often use tiny doses that people are only at first tolerating on their skin. They might put a drop of a liquid on their skin and not be able to take it by mouth. But we can usually, with most people, work around those sensitivities. If people can't tolerate those elements of our treatment, they can certainly tolerate the bioresonance treatment to a degree. And in a couple of cases, we've started with only doing that and not able to use any of our other treatments. But the positive side of having that level of sensitivity is that you will react really strongly to good treatments. So the people that are the most sensitive actually in some ways recover the fastest once you can get them to tolerate the treatments. Changes happen really quickly for those people because they are very responsive.
That makes sense. What would you recommend for a patient who is either very sick and can't travel, or perhaps can't afford treatment at this stage?
Well, we started something new to help those particular people. We were having a lot of calls a couple of years ago from particularly people with Lyme who really wanted help but were too sick to travel, or obviously finances were a problem, that kind of thing. And so I started writing, and we developed something called NTA Life, which is a completely new side to our website. So NTA Life is a way that we can support and treat people remotely. We're working through online consultations, Skype consultations, that kind of thing. And we have got everything on our website so that people can read how to help themselves and also buy the products that we recommend, so that people that are too ill to travel can be supported remotely for enough time until they can then travel, and people who can't access treatment because of affordability can actually use all of the resources on the site to help themselves and work out what things they can do for themselves to get well again. So the only expense for those people really would be the cost of the products on there. So because NTA Life is a completely new venture, and it still means that we need to be prescribing for you, we've had to make it a membership site, because we're only, as practitioners, allowed to prescribe for our clients. So it's a membership site that generally is going to cost £15 a month to be a member and become a client of ours. But I meant to talk to you about it earlier, Sarah. We've sort of, as a team, thought we'd like to give 3 months free membership to anybody that's a member of the LD UK group, so that we're given the opportunity for people to have a look and see whether it would be a good option for them. We'll have to talk later about how we put that offer up on the group.
Yeah, I can share the information with that. That's no problem. A very kind offer. I'm sure people appreciate it, particularly if they either want to just see what you're about and what you can offer,
Yes.
but equally if they can't afford treatment at this stage. And can people also order homeopathic and herbal treatments through the site as well?
Yes, so all of our a lot of our formulas are on there. So it's our Nature's Wisdom formulas, which are food-based nutrients and herbs, etc., are on there. And there's also a lot of the homeopathic formulas are on there too. So there's definitely everything needed on there to have a good start, and to really start improving things, and then think about how you want to go forward with your treatment.
Oh, that's fantastic, and thank you for the kind offer. Like I say, so for anybody listening to the interview or listening back, I'll get the details from Sonia after the call, and we'll share them in the group as how you can take advantage of that 3-month free offer. It's very kind. Thank you. So we also had a few questions all about, so a bit of a tangent here, but I think it's relevant to what we've been talking about with the underlying health issues and so on. What percentage of people you have that either that have been diagnosed with chronic fatigue or ME, but actually they're testing positive for Lyme disease?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I mean, it happens a lot. Obviously, I would say probably 60 to 70% are testing positive for Lyme. Everybody has toxicity issues, though. If they're not testing for Lyme, then they'll still have issues with heavy metals and pesticides, etc. Just that sometimes people have a different primary infection. So rather than Lyme, it might be mycoplasma is their primary infection, or sometimes even just unresolved viral infections, although that's less normal. But yeah, quite a big percentage, I'd say, for people with ME and chronic fatigue.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and it mimics. Sorry, my brain fog's not great today. It mimics what I've heard from other practitioners as well. That if somebody has been diagnosed with chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or one of the similar chronic conditions, that testing for Lyme and co-infections is a good idea.
Yeah, my very first awareness of Lyme, if you like, was a client quite a lot of years ago who had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, actually, although it was sort of question mark fibromyalgia. And it was what set me off with my whole sort of researching and learning how to do it really well. And obviously looking back at all the hundreds of autistic children I'd treated years ago, I'm sure that they would all have been positive for Lyme as well, or the majority anyway. Fortunately, with naturopathic treatment, it doesn't matter. The treatments are the same anyway, because we're just trying to get the body healthy and the immune system working so that the body can heal itself. It's not, our treatments don't need to be too specific to the actual pathogen that's caused the problem usually, but Lyme is the exception to that, really. Once those stealth infections get in and cause some chaos, they do need specifically targeting. Once the body is strong enough, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess at that point since that point rather, you've added in the bioresonance testing as well. How accurate do you find that, or how useful in guiding your treatment approach.
Yeah, very useful. I mean, I've actually always had a bioresonance device right since I was a student at homeopathy college. We were really lucky because there was a new version being developed and we got to play with them at college. And then I had to have one. And actually, they're so expensive that initially myself and two of the other students, when we graduated, we bought one between us. And we used to have it for 2 weeks at a time each, which would have been okay, except for the fact that I was in Hampshire and what the other lady was in Suffolk and the one in between was in London. So we had to drive it around the country and share it between us. But they are fantastic machines, and they are added to all of the time in terms of software. And it was about 5 years ago that they had the Lyme codes added to them. So from that point onwards, we were able to test more successfully for Borrelia and co-infections like Bartonella. But as I say, bioresonance is a fantastic tool. But like I was saying earlier, it's working on reading frequency. So it very much depends on different factors going on in the patient. If we just test someone cold without doing any preparation work with some of our formulas, it is a 50-50 whether Lyme will test positive. And we think that that's to do with immune system response and biofilm mainly. But what we do now, and we added this to our programme last autumn, I think, is for new patients that think they have Lyme or know they have Lyme, we give them 4 weeks worth of treatment with our formulas and remedies before they even come for their first testing appointment. And now we almost always get a positive test for Lyme in people that have a clinical picture of Lyme. In the past, sometimes we didn't get a positive until their second or third testing appointment, and we were really just relying on our clinical diagnosis and our feelings about what was happening. But the formulas that we use just raise the immune response slightly, probably gently break down some biofilm, and it means that we get a much clearer picture when we test them first time now. And there's also a little bit of difficulty with testing people that have sensitivity to EMFs, because the test result accuracy can be affected if the process of testing puts them into a stress response because they react negatively to electromagnetic radiation and that kind of thing. So luckily we learned some really good techniques when we did our AIT training with Dr. Klinghardt recently, so that now we know how to reduce the sensitivity in those people. It's only about 50% of people that are affected, but that's quite a big group. So we now have tools and treatments that we can use to reduce the sensitivity for that person during the testing. So we're now getting even more accurate test results, and actually people are feeling much stronger responses to the bioresonance treatments as well. So it's another way that we know it's making a big difference.
I guess that's very similar to tests at labs as well. I mean, I know I've heard doctors talking about the fact that their patients might have had a clinical diagnosis of Lyme disease, but have only tested positive from a lab test after starting treatment.
That's exactly true. Exactly true. If our clients had money to do everything, I would really like everybody to have done our Min Labs CD57 test before they come, because that gives us a really good indication of just how low the immune system is. And then if we could actually do Borrelia testing later on into their treatment, and at the end of their treatment, we'd be able to track things more effectively alongside what we're doing and what we're seeing with bioresonance. But yes, I mean, Dr. Klinghardt likes to do body work on his patients and a certain amount of treatment to make sure that the immune system is functional before doing any blood tests. And I think that lots of Lyme doctors are going that way.
Thank you. So just before we've had some more questions that have been pre-submitted, but before we go on to those, just to let people listening know, if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask of Sonia, please do put them in the comments below. We'll hopefully get time before the end of this session to go to those questions. So, Sonia, we've talked quite a lot about the generics. There were some more quite specific questions, I suppose. And somebody asked if you ever pulse herbal treatment.
Okay, we don't, because we follow the traditional herbalist approach, like Stephen Booner does. Um, he says it's not necessary to pulse herbals because they're so complex. Um, we're very lucky because we have a traditional herbalist on our team with 40 years of experience. He formulates and supplies all of our herbal formulas, and his knowledge is an absolute cornerstone of everything that we do at NTA. So he would say the same as Stephen Booner, that herbs don't need to be pulsed. I know that Cowden take a different view about pulsing, but his products are partly homeopathic, so that might be why that's advised with Cowden. We do pulse the homeopathic part of our protocols. So if you're a client of ours and you're having a liquid remedy that we're asking you to bang every day, that's because we're pulsing the potency and we're changing the potency on a daily basis. And we also alternate and rotate our homeopathics frequently so that we are hitting those bugs from all angles and changing enough about what we're doing for it to be at its most effective.
Okay, thank you. And if any of these questions are too specific, do feel free to say. Somebody else asked about the best treatment for a severe chronic Yersinia infection.
Yeah. With Yersinia, we're finding that once we've got people into the killing bugs phase of our protocol, once everything's ready and supported and the immune system's pretty functional, we're finding that bioresonance treatment alone will clear Yersinia. So we're sometimes needing to do it over a couple of sessions, but we're then seeing a very obvious change in the symptom picture, and we're seeing it then becoming clear on the bioresonance testing, so we can assume that it's completely gone. It's just with killing most of these pathogens, clearing most of these pathogens, it's relatively easy as long as you've had everything else worked on first. You just have to have everything in place. So you've got to have supported the adrenals, the pituitary, the thyroid, the gut, the liver, the kidneys, the lymph. They need to be sleeping, they need to be detoxing everything and the immune system working, and then a tiny bit of stimulus will be enough to clear an awful, severe chronic infection that may have been there for decades. It's really quite incredible when you get the body ready to work, how just fantastic the human body is, capable of almost anything.
That's to me that sounds a little bit like the way you build a house. You'd always make sure you built the foundations first.
Yeah,
you wouldn't expect a house to stand up without solid foundations.
Yes. If you get the foundations right, so that the body can function in the way that we're designed to, really, we're incredibly efficient. But there are so many things that weaken us and prevent that happening, and mostly that's toxicity, nutrient deficiency, all of the things that we work on in those early stages. So people are only feeling minor changes. They're like, well, okay, I'm sleeping better. Oh, okay, my bowel's working better, but I've still got A, B, and C. We know that that's how we need to do it. We've got to work through those stages, and then at the end, you can just use a tiny bit of stimulus and deal with the big problem.
What would you recommend for someone struggling to sleep as to how to help with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to come up with a single thing because everybody is different. On our NTA Life site, there is a whole module about sleep. So there's information there, lots of practical things to try, herbs, essential oils, remedies, relaxation techniques, a million and one different things. So I would say anybody should have a look there, and there'll be things they haven't tried, things they can have a go with. More than anything, I'd say that taking a 5-HTP supplement in the morning tends to help people sleep a lot. And although there's a minority of people that it will make worse, and reducing your EMF exposure in your home overnight, I'd say is the second most important thing to do. So make sure you're turning off your mobile phones and your Wi-Fi router and everything else. Give your brain a chance of calming down and going to sleep.
Thank you. And would you say a similar thing about detox methods as well, to have a look at the website?
Yes. The actual detox module should be going on very shortly, but there's lots of general information in the other modules. There will always be things that you haven't thought of to try. The most important support for detox is drinking a lot of water. And if you're a person with Lyme who's got a very weak bladder, which is very often the case, and that's because of pituitary weakness, not because of anything wrong with your bladder, then you'll need to be drinking a lot of water to enable you to flush everything through. My second most favourite thing is castor oil packs. I think they're almost the solution to everything. Brilliant support for your liver and your lymphatic system, so they do a lot of good for detox.
Okay, thank you. We've had a question in that says, do you think herbs can handle carditis?
I think again, it's every individual case. Any kind of inflammation in a muscle is only that, it's inflammation in a muscle. When it's carditis, it's a lot more scary because we know what it can lead to. But I would be far more trusting of herbal and homeopathic treatment than I would of antibiotic treatment, because I'd be worrying about the strength of all of the other organs and ability to cope with that essentially toxic treatment. So yes, I would say so. I've seen other cases improve even of carditis.
Okay, thank you. And I guess a similar question about patients who are very neurologically challenged. So if they've got neuro-Lyme,
Yeah,
and perhaps already very unwell or having seizures or whatever,
yeah.
at that stage, do you feel like IV antibiotics are required, or do you feel like that could be treated with a naturopathic approach?
No, I don't. It might be controversial, but again, I think that is more connected with levels of toxicity than anything else. And my belief is that adding antibiotics to that situation creates more toxicity. So I would be urgently looking to reduce levels of toxins in the body through the most gentle naturopathic means possible. And I would expect to, and I have seen, levels of seizures decrease quite quickly, quite rapidly. And you only need 20 to 30% improvement to feel confident that you're on the right track and keep going. It's a very, very scary thing. Interestingly, the cases that I've seen that involved seizures, etc., were a lot to do with B12 and coagulation of the blood. We've got some really good treatments to work on that, to do with hypercoagulation and toxicity combined, I think, based on cases I've seen.
Okay, thank you. There was a follow-up section to the carditis question, asking, you mentioned about it, inflammation, but what if it's infection, not just inflammation?
Yeah, I mean, by nature of talking about Lyme, there'll be infection. There'll be infection involved, won't there? We're very lucky with our bioresonance testing that we can individualise our treatment so much. So I would have complete confidence if I were testing somebody with bioresonance of, by the end of the session, knowing exactly what the cause of the carditis was. And it's very hard to tell whether that is the bacteria is the cause or a knock-on effect of the wider bacterial infection is the cause. And you need to be very specific about knowing what's causing a problem to be able to treat it effectively. So that's why we rely on the bioresonance so much, because we're massively aware that every case is different, and until we can assess and get some diagnostic information, we're only guessing really based on symptoms.
Thank you. And if somebody has got SIBO, and they can't tolerate the usual treatments, is that something bioresonance could treat, or would you deal with it in a different way?
Well, our people that have SIBO usually can tolerate homeopathic treatment, and we have some very gentle, simple food state herb formulas again that our people with SIBO can tolerate. These are products that only have 2 or 3 ingredients usually, And we'll very often get the herbalist to make us up individual samples of the separate ingredients, so we can make sure that nothing produces a bad reaction at all. So we haven't needed with any of our SIBO cases to go down the bioresonance only route. We have been able to find other things we can use at the same time.
Okay, thank you. A question here. Somebody's got the sort of typical large swollen joints that come along with Lyme arthritis. So severe that they can't walk very much. Have you treated or have had much success with people with Lyme arthritis, and sort of how long did it take to see that improvement?
Yeah, Lyme arthritis takes less time to treat than Lyme that's gone into the nervous system, certainly. When a joint is very swollen, that is a mechanism of the body to try and protect it. The body sends fluid full of healing cells to areas that are damaged and need that extra help. So the more swollen a joint is, the more your body's trying to fix it, actually. But again, we would, on a very individual basis, look at that person's whole picture. We'd look at all of the underlying factors that had allowed that to develop in the first place, and we'd be able to use the bioresonance to isolate exactly what was affecting the tissue around the joint specifically. And then what we normally do is still follow our same process of working through the supporting stages and then the detox stages and then moving on to killing stages. But we'd also use right from the beginning therapeutic, homeopathic and herbal formulas just to reduce the intensity of the symptoms so that the swelling comes down a bit, although it's not going to come down 100% in the early stages, comes down a bit, and it's come down enough for the person to sort of feel the relief and be a bit more functional.
Thank you. A question here around whether bioresonance can help with interstitial cystitis.
Yeah. Interstitial cystitis is very often to do with histamine intolerance, and lots of our Lyme clients have that as a side issue. It's usually induced by it's usually connected with heavy metal toxicity, and we find that it improves very much when we deal with that side of things. So with interstitial cystitis, the same. We'd be looking at the wider picture of what the underlying causes are for that person where everything's gone wrong, and then we'd be using therapeutic treatments to support those symptoms, to bring down the inflammation, to make them more comfortable right from the earliest stages, while we at the same time are working on the underlying causes of their overall health issues. That's a horrible condition. But there again, on our NTA Life site, there's a really good article on our blog about histamine issues and how we approach them. And I'm pretty sure that we've listed on our product page the herbal tincture and the homeopathic combination that we recommend for people with those issues. So I think that's on there too.
Okay, so if members join NTA Life after this call, we'll share the details of how to do so. They'll be able to access that information.
Well, yeah, that's all on there. Like I say, you need to be a member and you need to be signed in, because you need to be a client of ours for us to be able to advise you. We're protecting ourselves and our registration. I'm sorry, it's a little bit complicated, but it means you become a client of ours even though we're not physically seeing you.
That makes sense, thank you. A new question here. Have you had any experience of trigeminal neuralgia caused by Lyme?
Yes, I have. In the past, I worked with an integrated team where we specialised in TMJ disorders, so temporal mandibular joint disorders, and a lot of the patients that we were working with had that, and I was finding many people testing positive for Lyme, but it's a relatively complicated It's relatively complicated in that there's probably been damage to the trigeminal nerve in the past, and it can be very much to do with jaw alignment. And we're lucky that we have excellent cranial chiropractors that we work with, and excellent holistic dentists who understand about jaw alignment and these sorts of things. So if somebody was coming to see us with that as a problem, we would definitely be using our bioresonance to assess what was happening structurally, and it's quite likely that we would be recommended that they go to see a practitioner to deal with any alignment issues that we were finding. But at the same time, we have got really effective homeopathic remedies that manage that condition. I can remember quite a lot of cases where the homeopathic remedies will work well for months usually rather than weeks, but unless you deal with the underlying structural problem and have a bite appliance made by a good dentist or something along those lines to keep your jaw straight, the problem would come back in the long term. But yes, it's something I've seen lots of times and something that can be helped.
Thank you. And this is the last question we'll take from the group because I'm conscious of time. How accurate is food sensitivity testing? And that hasn't been specified whether they mean by bioresonance or something like one of the York tests or whatever. So perhaps you could just give your view on food sensitivity testing in general and how to approach that.
Yeah, I mean, food sensitivities, they're not the cause of anything. They're kind of an effect. So although we do test for food sensitivities, particularly the first time we see somebody, we're doing that so that they can avoid those foods in the short term, probably, while they're in a not very good place. But we're expecting, on the whole, those sensitivities to improve over time with treatment, especially the treatments that improve their gut function. My main problem with food sensitivity testing in general is not that it's inaccurate, but that it's not put into context. So you can pay quite a lot of money for testing and then kind of believe that if you follow those recommendations and change your diet significantly, then you're going to feel a lot better. And that's probably not the whole picture. Most people, if they take away the foods that they're sensitive to at the moment, will then just develop new sensitivities unless you actually take measures to improve the function of the gut and deal with whatever's been going wrong to create the sensitivities in the first place. And it's also a bit blurred because sometimes we're not actually sensitive to the food as such. Sometimes it's more the way it's been processed or what's been sprayed on it potentially. So I think we have a lot of problem now with wheat, but I know a lot of people who can eat wheat when they go to France because it's of a better quality and it's probably not been sprayed as much as what we're buying in our supermarkets here. It's a really blurry issue, food sensitivities.
Okay, thank you for your views on it. And before I go to our very last question, is there anything that you wanted to tell us generally about NTA clinics or NTA life that we haven't already covered?
Oh, I was just thinking, I think I had some other questions that I was sent that we haven't spoken about yet. Let me just have a look.
Yeah, if there's anything that I've missed, there's an odd one I've skipped because I felt like you'd already answered it as part of another one. But if there's anything you feel like that you'd like to cover, please feel free to do so.
Okay. Yeah, one of the questions that I was sent was to do with whether you can use bioresonance as a standalone treatment, and I didn't say everything that I was thinking to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say that we can work on everybody with the bioresonance treatment, and especially now we have the ART techniques that mean we can work more effectively with the people that have EMF sensitivity. That's going to make a big difference. I wanted to say that there are a lot of different systems for bioresonance. The system that we use is called a SCIO, and it comes from the same manufacturers as the machines that I've been using for years and years. It is a unique type of bioresonance because it has the ability built into it to autofocus, and that means that it calibrates to the client's energy pattern and automatically cuts itself off if there's any negative feedback during a treatment. So that's a completely unique thing. And I think it's really important that people with Lyme, especially because they're so sensitive, understand that bioresonance treatment um, can put a patient into a herx, can cause a patient a stress reaction if the treatment given is too much for that person. So our system is the only one that does that, automatically switches off. And if people are thinking about having treatment with another system or self-treating or anything along those lines, I would just say to be really cautious with other systems, because you need to understand that you really can overdo it with things like programs for killing or even detoxing, and because those systems just use set programs that give the same frequencies to everybody, and they don't have the ability to check back with the patient and make sure it's okay, and cut itself off when it's not okay. So I thought that was important to get across. I had a question as well. Let me see. Oh, it was the saddest question. It was the question, what would you say to a patient who feels there's no way out?
Yeah, it's always my last question, and it is a very sad one, but also can be quite uplifting, I think, as well, the answer. So if there's nothing else that you feel like we haven't covered, we'll go to that one. So what would you say to a patient who feels there's no way out?
Well, I would say that it's really normal to feel that way. I think most people, I'm sure most of my clients, I think, know that I had chronic illness a long time ago. I had a standard sort of ME diagnosis, but it meant that I was ill and in and out of bed for long periods of time for 8 years. And I know that I felt that way. I know that I felt that there was sort of no possibility of anything changing and getting better at that time. I think it's a stage that everyone hits. The thing that I would really encourage everybody to do is to find a practitioner that you can work with, that you feel like you can trust and is a good match for you, whoever that is. Lyme's a really confusing world, and you need an ally to work with to steer you through the process. I know that lots of people feel disillusioned by medics and let down by the system, and probably let down by all sorts of people that you asked for help, but there are good people. There are good practitioners trying really hard to learn about Lyme so that they can help people to get better. And the Lyme practitioners that I know, they're not in it for the money, they're not on an ego trip, they haven't chosen the easiest area that they think they can prey on vulnerable people. They probably just met someone that was really sick and they really wanted to help them, and they started learning about Lyme. And for some of us, Lyme is as much a part of our life almost as it will be for some of you. It's all encompassing once you get into it, and there's a really strong need to help as many people as possible. So positive mental attitude is really important. Don't want anybody to feel there's no way out, but I think working with the right practitioner can really help you to achieve more of a positive mental attitude more of the time, because hopefully you don't feel like you're in it alone and you feel like you've got somebody to support you through it.
Oh, thank you. That's a great message to finish on, and thank you so much for your time. Apologies that we've gone a little bit over. I hope that doesn't impact your day too much.
That's fine. No problem at all. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, thank you for your time today. We'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.